humanity and AI almost reflect God and us, because God created us to learn from the world around us, to learn from our parents, to learn from our school books, to learn from society clues and learning about art specifically, and then generating our own art, our own creativity in whatever way that is, whether that's painting, drawing, filmmaking, story writing, food creation, like things like that are art. So how is that different from us, as we are the creator, creating technology that learns from what we give it, the same way God gives us the opportunity to learn from the world around us and create something that's beautiful and that we can call art.
Hello there.
Don't have a good day. Have a great day.
Talk to me, Goose.
I'm gonna steal the Declaration of Independence.
Why so serious?
World! I could do this all day.
Are you watching closely?
Welcome everybody to the One-Eyed Film Podcast. I'm your host, Seth Mossberg, and today we are panicking because AI is taking over our jobs and taking over movies and the media, and people are striking about it because it's such a big deal, and what are we going to do? I got Will here with me today to talk about AI art and the dangers or ethics of it, and it's interesting and how it affects production of movies to lifestyle and benefiting your life, my life, and also just art in general. Is AI art real art? And we're going to talk about that here. So strap in and enjoy our conversation on that. Will, what is your thesis, I suppose, on if AI is real art? Let's talk for a second about the image generation ones that are popular, DALL-E 2 or Midjourney, things like that, or even as it's getting to become video AI like Stable Diffusion. Is that real art when you're not actually putting effort into making these images like is supposed to be done, or is this just a new branch of the creative process? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, there's definitely a lot that's going to be talked about it, and I'm certain that this is going to be a debate for the future. Just to give a bit of a background, I actually have taken a philosophy of art class before AI art really became a thing, so we didn't talk about it then. But there's definitely a lot of I'm definitely very interested in a lot of the philosophical questions that come with this, because there's a big debate in aesthetics and the philosophical aesthetics about what is art, for example. How do you define it? What makes something good art? What should you pursue in art? Is there an objectivity to art? That's all these sorts of questions, and AI is really making a lot of us scratch our heads over, because it just makes it so much more confusing, because it's not built by humans. It's not art, quote unquote, made by humans. And so just to kind of start off with your question, what do I kind of think about AI and art? I think it really depends on how you define art. And I'm just going to kind of go with my personal preference, but I kind of define art in two ways, in a way what it's actually portraying and how it's portraying whatever it's showing. For example, you can have a stick figure drawing of a crocodile, or you can have an anime drawing of a crocodile. That's an image, and I would call that art. But what I also factor into art is how it's created and the process behind it and who's making it as well. That's a different spiel, and that's, I think, become very important with AI art, because AI is artificial intelligence constructing something, not a human, which is where this big debate comes into play.
Yeah, the weird part is where you said it's not created by a human, and yes, you're correct. It's not directly made by a human being painting or designing or creating something like that. It's instead learning from humans. It's using inputs from things that have been created the old-fashioned way and is making a mashed up version of that. And it's weird having seen that progression throughout the last even 2-3 years, to the point of videos starting to look real, videos made by AI looking more and more real, when it used to be a terrible mess of barely recognizable shapes. Now it's getting better, and it's just going to keep getting better. And that's scary to the point that we don't know what's going to be real or what's not. What a lot of people don't realize, though, is that it actually does take a lot of effort to get things to look good in AI. Because it's so finicky, it takes more detailed prompts to make it look better. So yes, there's a little bit more work, but it's less work than creating it from scratch in another case. And the way this relates to movies and stuff is, specifically, we're coming kind of out of the season of strikes in Hollywood. They're coming to some deals with the writers and the unions and all that stuff. But the reason that the writers went on strike, partially, it was mostly driven by them needing to get paid more. That's a little important. But it was also a fear for the AI. There's no regulations put in place yet for AI and how it's going to be used in the industry. In previous episodes, I've made the joke that AI could write better stories than certain shows or movies that have come out recently. And that's the irony of these writers striking, is that some of them probably actually can't write that well. And AI might be a better option. Not to say that's why directors and producers are turning to AI for scripts and stuff, is because it's actually more cheap. It's cheaper to have a large language model be taught off of a certain genre of movie or a certain director. I don't remember if Ethan talked about it during the Is Hollywood Dead episode, but he talked about it on that trip that we were on, of what if we just trained a large language model like ChatGPT on every single Nolan story, and then it would produce something that was similar to Christopher Nolan's work. That's way cheaper than hiring someone or paying them for their story. And it makes sense, but is it ethical? Is it worth giving up the life behind the creativity of the story and of the person who's coming up with that for the sake of efficiency? And we're even seeing this in video form. Like, it was manifested in the writers' strike and how they wanted to make sure there was AI regulations as part of their demands. But there is also already signs that they're using AI video. With the Secret Invasion intro to the show, they admitted that was generated by AI. That's taking away jobs from motion graphic creators. Like, that could have been really cool. And yes, that was kind of part of the story of Secret Invasion, that there was an imposter who was pretending to be someone they're not, and that's kind of what AI is. But I don't think that was at the cost of doing that, especially as the strikes were kind of starting. The strikes are good in the sense that they are pushing for real creativity and not some reflective creativity on something that isn't real. And I want you to expound on that a little bit more. Like, why is it such a problem that it's not real? Isn't it just, if it looks good or if it sounds good on paper, then it's good enough for the big screen? People won't notice the difference as long as we progress in this technology, making it better and better. What's to say the next Avengers 5 is going to be written by AI and no one's going to notice?
Yeah, there's a lot of questions there, and which again is why this topic is kind of getting really intense between people who like AI and see it as the future and oh, we should be embracing this. And there's a lot of people who are like, no, this is terrible. It's the AI art apocalypse. AI is like art in the sense that it's showing something, but again, it kind of depends on how you define art. A lot of the ways people usually define art is an expression of human emotions or something like that. It's meant to evoke a feeling. And AI art isn't necessarily designed to express anything. It's simply just catalogs and algorithms putting together what's a compilation of what's already existed based on existing models and data, which is for the case for AI, is usually paintings and stuff. So I still would consider AI art and stuff like that art, and it is progressively getting better and better as we've seen over however long it's been developing. I think the first time I was exposed to this was when you showed me the Dream by Wombo app, and since then it's still gotten more and more better at what it's being able to do, and there might hypothetically reach a point where it is indistinguishable and even better than human-created art, supposedly at least. But I think the difference between AI art and human art is that human art is more impressive in the sense that it is more difficult for a human to create something, and they can create something that is original, while AI can't. AI is limited to only what it has input into it. It can create incredible things because it has access to so much data and is able to synthesize that data so efficiently, but it isn't able to create new art. It can only base it off existing art, and it's easier, quote unquote, for AI to do that. For a human, it's a lot more difficult, and thereby I think it's more impressive to do that. Humans can make something that is well made, even if it's poor quality, quote unquote, because a human will take hours upon hours to develop a painting or whatever. I just think of an example for I'll use a pretty simple example of the Mona Lisa by Leonardo da Vinci. He's considered a master at his craft, and he's spent years upon years doing that. Hypothetically, if AI ever got to the point where it was good enough to create a Mona Lisa thing like that, and even better, let's say hypothetically it's able to do that, I still would put Leonardo da Vinci's Mona Lisa better than that because it requires more difficulty. It requires years of training and practice and just time itself to get the correct paint strokes and stuff like that. It's more difficult for him to do that and thereby I consider it more impressive what he's able to do, and thereby I think it has more worth, aesthetic worth to it. AI art, at least at this point, isn't too impressive, at least in regards to like how it looks. But even if it were the case that it was better looking, I still think human art has the quality of it's an expression of something. You're trying to feel, you're trying to express an emotion you have, or to invoke an emotion people have, and like it's more importantly, I think it's more impressive that humans are able to do that because you are the first person to create this style of painting or this genre of painting, or like anime, for example. AI art on its own can never create the style of anime because that requires human ingenuity and curiosity to create something new. And AI can't do that. It can only base on existing models. And it's just simply the fact that like it's more difficult for humans to do these things. And thereby, because it is more difficult, I believe that it is more impressive and more worthwhile than AI art.
You said two different things, and I agree with one of them and disagree with the other. One sounded like you were arguing that because it takes longer to make a painting or takes longer to write a script from scratch, and that ChatGPT or Dolly can create those things in a minute, that inherently makes the human creation more valuable. And it's not a matter of time. That's where I disagree with you, or at least I misunderstood what you were saying. It's not a matter of time. I believe what you said that was true is that it's the effort and the creativity behind it. And that's the whole point of AI, is that it's only learning off of other things. You cannot just create a large language model or an image generation tool and let it go and it creates anything. It would just do nothing. It would sit there without any information and not be able to come up with anything. It's a learning model. It learns from other things that has already been created and mixes them together and makes its understanding of what a cow looks like. And that's actually legitimately what it does, is it looks at pictures of cows, associates that shape and pattern and spots and features and associates that with the word COW when typed into the prompts engine. Then it starts creating that from what it has learned from thousands of images of what a cow looks like. And I laugh because it's a funny example, but it's what it is. If you didn't train it on anything, it wouldn't spit out anything. It's just as good as what you give it. And that's where the difference between efficiency through AI and creativity through humanity is a massive separation, where the AI is dependent on whatever information is given to it or not. The human is naturally creative. Yes, inspired by things around us to maybe have an idea, but that idea is unique and is possibly the first time anyone has ever thought of that idea, ever. That's what's unique about us. The AI can come up somehow with new ideas, but it's more or less a jumbling together of other ideas. And that, I think, is where AI can be beneficial. Instead of using it as the result, using it instead as the inspiration for us. Using ChatGPT to come up with ideas for a short story, and it just gives you one prompt, and then you run with that prompt and write a short story off of it. It might have been an idea you hadn't had before because you didn't have access to all these different titles and genres and styles of story and all that stuff. But because ChatGPT gives you that prompt, you can go ahead and run with that and put your creativity into that one jumbled together bunch of words that this computer that's just ones and zeros somehow thinks and gives you that option, I suppose. But the wrong thing, I think, for AI is to then say, okay, write this short story that's 200 pages long, and then taking that and giving it to a publisher and writing into a book. That, I believe, is ethically wrong. And it's very weird saying that out loud because it doesn't seem like it should be, but that's because it's so new. This is such a new development in our culture, in technology and all that, that it's so weird to not want that, because it's a good tool. Just like anything in this world is a good tool, it needs to be used to its extent and to its own possibility instead of as the next best thing. And that's where all the dystopian movies come from, is where AI took over. And I just watched The Creator this week about how AI decided to kind of take over robots and become another race. And then people are like, oh, they're humans, they have feeling. No, they're not. They're still ones and zeros. Like, you can be mean to ChatGPT and it's not going to care because it doesn't have feelings. That's the other thing, is that we have emotions. Computers do not. And so we understand what will resonate with people. That one dramatic scene, that one twist that's going to make the whole story come together. That doesn't happen naturally for a computer. It doesn't understand twists and
emotion like we do, and we will get that on a deep level. And that's the movies that you feel something in the twist or in the super emotional scene because someone wrote that part of the story to mean something more, and that's not going to come from a computer.
I think like first off, one thing is I'm not my focus is not so much on time or the time it takes to create an artificial painting. It's more the fact that it requires difficulty. Just to use like a writing example, which you mentioned, like people like talk about ChatGPT or stuff like that. If I use ChatGPT and it writes out the majority of a plot and a story, like a short story for me, but then most of that is not really my creation, quote unquote. It's mostly based on like an AI. But if I use no ChatGPT at all and I labor really, really hard and I work and I try to be creative or whatever, and I produce a short story on my own, I think that the very fact that it's more difficult for me to do that, it's therefore more impressive that I'm able to actually produce something. Even if like, let's say in this hypothetical example, that my short story completely on my own is of inferior quality to a short story created by an AI. I still think my short story is of greater aesthetic worth in a certain sense, in the sense that it's human created and requires difficulty and struggle to create. And because of that, it's more impressive. And I think therefore it's like more in a certain sense. It should be respected for that compared to like an AI.
So, following your thought process, if we somehow make the computers work harder to make their result, whether that's more time or more computing power, then it's valid.
Not no, because like you can't equate it because like time
I get it. Yeah.
an AI runs much more efficiently, and like you can't equate the struggle of a human trying to create something compared to like an AI creating something because it doesn't create something. It's simply just like processing and putting something together to try to create an outcome that is when programmed to deem is optimal. I just think that the very fact like this is kind of the reason I have an issue with abstract art because it seems like cheating to me, and also the whole like new art movement, so like everything is subjective or whatever. Like I put a banana on a wall and that's art. It's like no, this person who is like inferior to you, quote unquote, in the artistic world. Like, for example, I'll just use me as an example. I'm not a good artist, but I do like to draw. And it's difficult for me to do that. And I don't think I'm particularly good. Like, I kind of rate things on like different scales of like how they're produced and also like what they look like. And so because of that, I can give arts different ratings. And I'm not a good artist, but I can at least try. I'm trying my best to produce something that's good. Whereas like if you just like put a banana on a wall, you're not really trying that hard. You're just more or less trying to make a statement.
I love the banana on the wall example.
That's because it's actually existed.
I know, but it's the epitome of abstract art, and I think the definition of art has become very fuzzy with the rise of postmodernism. And I don't want to get into the postmodernism discussion today, but what I do want to talk about is how humanity and AI almost reflect God and us, because God created us to learn from the world around us, to learn from our parents, to learn from our school books, to learn from society clues and learning about art specifically, and then generating our own art, our own creativity in whatever way that is, whether that's painting, drawing, filmmaking, story writing, food creation, like things like that are art. So how is that different from us as we are the creator? No reference to the movie. Creating technology that learns from what we give it, the same way God gives us the opportunity to learn from the world around us and create something that's beautiful and that we can call art. Like you said, that art is labor intensive and needs effort from a human to be produced.
Yeah, that's an interesting. I've thought of that per se, because I mean you can definitely tell like with AI, it's got a certain look and feel to it. Like especially nowadays, because I look on certain artist websites. So you can
put aside how it looks and how you can tell most things are AI. Not most things. How you can tell something is AI. Like look at the hands, because AI is still pretty bad at doing hands. Things like that. Imagine AI could make the most realistic thing. We're talking about the ethics of it. AI can make the most realistic, like you compare a human's art to AI art and you can't tell the difference. Why is it, when we're comparing humanity and AI to God and humanity, how does that work? How is it good? How is it bad?
I mean, I'd probably just kind of say what I've already been arguing. Again, like the difficulty involved with like that and the creativity and the expression of human emotion you're trying to communicate with like your own work and whatever. Kind of like that. I mean, it's the same thing. Like we're created in the image of God, and we're supposed to be creative in that. Like, I mean, there's like examples of like the Bible talks a lot about like just like the beauty of nature and how that's like beautiful. in and of itself, and that's an expression of like God's creativity and His love and things like that. So I guess like in this comparison, yeah, it's mostly just like that. Like we are humans, or trying like humans, kind of like AI, are taking what's already existing and just trying to create something, and we can sort of create some impressive stuff with it, some interesting stuff, but it's not original. Which is another thing I thought about before as a philosophical term, is that humans don't, in a certain sense, don't really create anything original. Like everything we do create has some basis in reality that already exists to a certain extent. And the only truly original being is God Himself.
Yes, you hit the nail on the head with your first thought, that we are made in the image of God, and that's what makes us creative. That's what makes art, is us reflecting our creator with creative things that we call art, that humans call beautiful and artistic, and things like that that you can't say about an AI. It's not made in our image. It's just made to copy things that we have already made. Because we're made in the image of God, we are able to make new things. And that's not against what you just said about everything has a basis in reality and has already been done in some sense, but new stories, new ways of making films, new ways of painting or drawing or things like that, that reflect an originality that God has and that we have because we are made in His image. And I think that because of this postmodern movement of art can be anything, that has pushed forward the way that AI is created. And it's almost, I would say, a slap in the face of God to say, look, we have become our own God, creating something that can create. And yet it's not even close to what humans can create. And I don't want to say something that's going to make me bite my tongue in 10 years when AI can do something just as good as we can. But with the mentality that it's only going to get better and more profitable to cut costs in the creative areas, we're going to start losing the idea of what art is, as more than we already have with things like the banana on the wall. It's what is art if we're going to start creating false pieces of imagery that is just a jumbled up mess of what a computer thinks is good. That's the other thing, is that we understand, we have a moral code written on our heart, what is good and true and beautiful. AI does not have that. It does not have good or bad. Yes, it reflects our good and bad, but that's more or less reflecting what society says. If you ask AI something political, it's going to side with the popular opinion rather than, I don't want to say the correct opinion, because politics is a lot of pointing fingers, but it's not going to have that moral code. It can't give you a realization about the Bible. If it would ever give you a theological answer, it's only going to regurgitate what it has gleaned off of the internet. So where we have created this monster that's only going to get bigger and more powerful, I want us as Christians to understand that it's never going to replace our creativity. Just because the tools are available does not mean that they should be widely used or accepted. They're good tools in their zone, in their area of where they can be used. But if we start including anything from DALL-E or Midjourney or ChatGPT as art in the moral sense of art, of creativity that is good, true, or beautiful, then that's where we start losing that definition of good and true and beautiful when it comes to the form of art.
It's definitely concerning, or it can be concerning on one hand, like, oh, AI art's going to take over, again, the whole AI art apocalypse. On the other hand, like, I'm somewhat not concerned in the fact that, like, it's ultimately, even if it looks better, let's say in some case, or hypothetically it will get to the point where it can look better, I'm still not too concerned, like, in the sense that, like, ultimately I know what is valuable, and no painting, even if it's human or AI, is never going to match, at least for me, the beauty of nature. But just, I do have like, some questions, kind of closer to final questions, though, to thinking about the role of AI and the future of AI art. So just kind of like my question to you is, what should be the role of AI art? So what do you think should the role of AI art be? And then what do you think its place will be in the future? The second question isn't what do you think it should be, but the second question is, what role do you think it's going to be? What's going to be the effect and the outcome of AI art in the future? So one's kind of like how you'd like things to be, and one is kind of how things will be or turn out to be. So I kind of want to hear your opinions before I give my own.
I kind of already said it. I think it should be used as a tool, whether as it's to generate inspiration. I've definitely done that with ChatGPT, coming up with titles and like keywords that it comes up with, and then making my own title after that or whatever. It's a starting tool, not a finishing tool. And where I think it's going to end up being, I don't think it's going to take over. There's a great audio drama that I listen to called K63, starring Oscar Isaac, that I really love because it dives into the AI in the future. It's not going to be like that, but it's fun to think of those things. When it comes to AI and art, I think it's going to be more widely accepted, but also cracked down on. It's going to be used more as people start to learn how to use it better, but it's also going to be more restricted because of the government's going to get involved. Certain studios are going to get involved saying you can't use that. We have ways to detect it, things like that. And it's almost going to be a war of studios and people wanting to make things for cheaper and quicker. But they're going to be met with this moral and legal battle of how is it going to affect people's livelihoods and quality of their final product, I think is where it's going to end up. I'm excited to see how it progresses, only because seeing technology grow like that is cool. But as things start getting integrated, like I believe Google is mixing it in with search engines, same with Bing, and it's going to become very casual. And then it's going to start losing accuracy. I mean, it started off by losing accuracy, and their goal is to make it more accurate instead of just creating facts out of thin air that aren't facts. But if people start trusting in these things, it's going to be a problem.
Yeah, I would say, just to like speculate on the future of AI art. On the one hand, it's here to stay. Like even the people who are like the most aggressively anti-AI art and want it purged from the existence of the universe, it's here to stay. And one reason how I know that is, pardon me for being crude, but because people are going to be using it to create porn. Like that's, and if you can do that, like it's not going away anytime. And also, like you mentioned earlier, like if it's going to be cheaper and more expedient for Hollywood to use AI art and AI generated like writers, they're going to do that because Hollywood has never had an issue with money over ethics before. That being said, however, what I could see happening, this is a little bit of speculating, I could see like a big boom and rise of AI, and then also like suddenly people realize, oh, it has some major drawbacks though. And also I could see a big like anti-AI movement, which kind of already exists, to like keep it contained, so to speak. There's a really good video by Hello Future Me, which is like 2.5 hours long. And he talks about some of the legal aspects of this and how there's like, we're ahead of the curve for AI art, where in comparison to like previous technological gaps and jumps in history, like the technology existed and we didn't know what to do with it. Whereas with this one, we're kind of ahead of the curve. There's already been like lawsuits and like the government policy is starting to be put into place. So I think that's kind of a good sign in the fact that if we set like some good policy in place where like you can use AI because it's not going anywhere, but like make it so that it's more restricted for like widespread use in like movies and stuff like that. I could definitely see that being the case where it becomes more casual and popular, like you mentioned, but it also kind of like fills in its own weird niche. And I can totally see some like very interesting like new art forms designed out of AI art, like using AI art, but incorporating them into like new ways of like creating art and stuff like that, where they're still kind of human and original and creative. And yeah, it's going to be very interesting for sure to see where it all goes, because I have no idea ultimately. But I do think that I'm not super concerned, but I am somewhat concerned.
I think it was an MKBHD video of wondering where AI is going. And it was kind of the shape of a bell curve. And they were wondering, he and his team were wondering where on the bell curve or whatever graph it was, where we are at with AI. Because we saw this with phones. Phones were mobile phones in your car, and then it was just a phone and all that. And then suddenly it shot up with smartphones, and you were able to play games, and you could actually do things and watch videos and all that. And that's where smartphones peaked and started to become popular. But now we're on this downward slope of phones where it's kind of leveling out, and there's nothing really groundbreaking happening. The cameras are going to be as good as they get. Batteries are getting better, yeah, but there's not really massive improvements in phones. And where are we at on that curve of AI? Are we at the peak where this is the best it's going to get, and now it's just going to kind of fade into the background and be another tool, same as Microsoft Word? Or are we just on that first incline? And are we going to have we yet to see the peak of AI usage and possibility? And that's the scary part, is wondering if it's all going to come to a head in 10 years when something big drops. And yeah, it's the unknown.
It is the unknown. But then, like, kind of for like my thoughts of how AI art should be used, and I'll be kind of honest. If AI art never existed, I think that would probably be pretty fine, because we were creative enough beforehand without it, even with postmodern and like that whole debacle at post World War II. But like humans have been like plenty creative without AI art, and we will be with it. I think that AI art, because it's here to stay, practically speaking, you might as well use it, but use it, I think, responsibly and wisely. And I would, at least for me personally, because I have like Dream or whatever. Again, I'm not a good artist, but I like to draw. But my sense of like creativity is greater. Like I noticed that like if I type into an AI art app on my phone and I do something with that and I create an image, I'm like, oh, that's cool. I sort of created that. I put in the prompt, but I didn't necessarily create it. But if I take some time and like spend like an hour and sketch out like a little drawing of like a person, it's probably not going to be as good looking as this prompt I just created, but I get more satisfaction because I made that drawing. I spent the time and effort to do that. And so I think that's kind of how you should view AI, as it's nice and it can be useful for people who aren't the best artists like myself. It can definitely be useful for like character creation or just like having an idea and trying to bring it to life. But I think it's going to be more better for you if you try and develop your own writing skills, your own drawing skills, your own like musical creation skills on your own, because that's your work. That's not the AI doing something on your behalf. The AI is like becoming like the middleman of sorts in the creation. Whereas like if you're doing it yourself, you're making that drawing you made is yours. That musical song you made is yours. That novel or short story you wrote is your work, even if it has inspiration from other people, from the world, or from people who have like giving you advice or whatever. There is a difference, and I think that's important to remember. And that's kind of how AI art should be used, I believe, as something of like a useful tool. Like I know that artists, for example, can use AI art to like quickly generate like background art or whatever, like something that's like really difficult and time consuming. I can see that being useful, or like getting a rough sketch, because AI art isn't known to be particularly good if you look into the details of it. So if you need like just like some background stuff, or to get a good basis design for this character you're creating, and then you work on it afterwards, like I can see that definitely being like a very useful and valuable way to use AI. Or like, again, like you've kind of mentioned, like getting plot ideas for stories and stuff like that. But with that said, though, I still would encourage trying to use AI art less than is necessary. Like if you, I think it's going to be better for the human soul if we just try to use AI less than more in any scenario, because then you are developing your own skills, whether that be drawing, thinking, anything like that. It's going to be better for you to just try to rely on your own creativity than the creativity of an I believe is going to be better for yourself and for your self-esteem than trying to rely on an AI. So that's just kind of my take on it, that it's going to be used, so you might as well use it if you have to. But I would just encourage people to try to be creative on their own and use it less than more. Because there's like a really good quote that I've been talking about in like Colossians 3:23 that says like, whatever you do, work it out with all your heart, as working for the Lord, not for human masters. And I think that should really inspire us to say, hey, I'm trying to do this and develop my skills as best I can for the glory of the Lord, and not necessarily for my own glory per se. That's kind of like my 2 cents on it, and like where I think it's going to go. I'm sure I'm going to be wrong in the future, and it's going to be really interesting to see. But yeah, it's pretty complicated, and it's a very fascinating and weird topic, but I'm very intrigued to see where it's going to go and how it's going to be used.
This is a fun fact that I just wanted to include in this episode. So it's really weird having seen the crypto and the NFT era come and gone, and now it's kind of being replaced by AI. Like that's the buzzword. It used to be crypto and NFT was the words that you paid attention to, and that's kind of gone down the drain. All the graphics cards that were once used for crypto mining and all that stuff are now being used for AI. And what's interesting is that NVIDIA is now selling the H100 graphics card. Guess how much? Do you know how much graphics cards usually go for? Like the good.
I have no idea.
Okay, so they go for, if you're getting a high quality graphics card, it's going to be $500 to $2,000 depending on where you get it. This graphics card by NVIDIA, meant for AI development and generation and all that, is $40,000. The H100 is the cost of a trip to college. It's crazy. And the point I heard from a podcast is that this is the gold rush of our era, the era of getting to AI as quickly as possible and progressing it as much as possible, and comparing it to the actual gold rush of California and out west and all that. People actually didn't make that much gold going out and mining for gold. The people who made the most money was the people selling the tools to go mine the gold. So NVIDIA is hopping on this train of providing the tools to make AI happen by making these insane graphics cards and selling them for so much. And they're the ones profiting. I don't know. I just thought that was a cool fact. And because that's where my head is at when it comes to technology and stuff like that. So fun fact of the day as we talk about AI.
Yeah, it's definitely the buzzword right now. And it's going to be just very interesting to see. I'm really intrigued about the new philosophical arguments for art and stuff like that, and how that's going to affect the philosophy of art and aesthetics, as well as like the new styles of artistry and like art genres that are going to develop out of this. Because I know there's going to be something crazy that's going to form because it's like the internet and it's AI and it's all together, but it's going to definitely be very interesting. So
Yeah, you mentioned the buzzword. The buzzword of AI is actually really annoying right now because I see things that are advertised as AI, and I think that's not AI. I can't, no specific examples, but it's just people using that as the hook.
the cool thing.
The cool thing to get your attention. If you watched any of the Google or Apple phone announcements from this last month in September, like they
Where they're
kept
using
saying,
all AI voice.
they said AI so much. And some of it's not AI. It's just the buzzword. It's so that they can say that.
What's really interesting for me is like seeing all like these ads on like YouTube or whatever that are either using one AI voice generators, so that's like AI voice, they don't have to pay actors, or like two like clearly AI generated images. I'm just like, yeah, you guys were already sleazy, but I mean, they're surprising me.
But that's exactly the problem we're talking about. Is they see that it's cheaper. It costs them a subscription to Dolly 2 and maybe paying for ChatGPT 4 to make something half decent for a 15-second commercial. And that drives me crazy when I see something of lesser quality that had no effort put into it. And that, I think that's where we're seeing it right now, is the commercials that are low quality, that need to be cheap because you want to spend more money on marketing than making the project. And so if you only spend $30 to make an ad and then run it for $1,000, that's way more profitable than spending $1,000 paying somebody to make that ad and then spending less money on marketing. Like, it makes sense, but it's frustrating to see the lower quality videos and stuff.
Yeah, and it's just going to mainly depend like if people are going to be fine with that, which is, I don't know, like if you get like a majority of people are like, no, we don't like AI, and we're not going to watch anything associated with AI. I'm sure like in the future there's going to be like tags like this book or this movie was not impacted by AI or whatever. I'm sure there's going to be like some sort of like reference like that in the future. Is that going to be if there's any AI, are people going to be so adamant against that it's going to be unprofitable? Because that's the key thing. If it's unprofitable to use it, they're not going to use it, which I don't know. I really don't know. But I mean, again, like I think there are just going to be like some policies put in place like where it's going to try and refrain and keep, if we can stay ahead of the curve and like stop it from becoming too terrible, I think that will definitely help, but who knows?
I think companies, both commercial and movie studios, will need to determine the balance between expenses, how much they're willing to cut expenses for the sake of AI. I mean, I guess this isn't just an AI problem. It's expenses versus income. Like, how much are you going to spend on your product, whether that's marketing or creation or whatever, versus income. And a lot of people will see that AI is mostly free or very cheap and use that as an out. And like I said, we're seeing that in commercials now. It's just going to keep growing until we have a movie made entirely by AI. And while that will be interesting, it's scary because it's not supposed to be like that.
It's just an interesting thing for me because, again, like I mentioned, I'm not a good artist per se. Like, there's like a certain quality of artistry that I want to get to, and I'm not at that point. It's not like super high artistry, but there's just kind of a point. I just basically want to be able to make something that I say, oh, that's cool. That's the point of like that's how far I want to develop with my skills. So for me, it's like, oh, I can basically just like type in this stuff and get something that's really nice looking, because I spend a lot of time on like wikis or whatever. And like, if I have a character idea and I want to create an image of a character, I feel somewhat conflicted if I use AI, because like I don't want to do that, but it's like pretty easy and it gets something of an idea of what I come across. But I think there's still like, at least for certain circles that I've seen, that AI art is still kind of cringe, which I think is kind of a good thing. So yeah, it's an interesting thing, because I can definitely see the use and potential of AI, but at the same time, I kind of don't want to be the type of, I don't want to use it per se, because I don't think it's going to be as good. And this is why because I've gotten back into drawing as a hobby in the past few weeks and months, and that's definitely like, I kind of don't really think don't know if I should be doing AI. So there's a lot of dilemmas and stuff that's going to be going on for a long time.
Yep.
So
we'll see how it develops.
Yeah. Otherwise, we'll just pull like a Dune and do a Butlerian jihad and destroy all the machine and like write a mandate in the Bible that thou shalt not make a machine in the image of man. Like in Dune, there's literally a thing that's like a thing in Dune lore. Why there's no AI.
Is our world going to be Dune, or is it going to be the Matrix? We don't know. All right.
Yeah, I can never see the Matrix. I could definitely see see like a Dune type of thing where people like get so fed up with AI that they just like destroy it all and do something. I don't know.
Well, thank you for talking about this very topical topic. I think it's important as we look at studio productions and things like that that are starting to use these things more commonly. And it's got to be regulated, but there's also nothing we can do about it. Thank you guys so much for listening. We have not been taken over by AI yet, but you never know. It could be coming in the future. Follow us on all our socials. We got a bunch of clips over there and ways you can share this with your friends. Follow us on whatever platform you're listening to and join our Discord to be a part of the One-Eyed family so that we can talk about these things in more detail as a group who like movies and who like art. But until you hear from the real us, again, know that you are loved. God bless.
See you later.